Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
An audience member walks out of a Shakespeare production because it was delivered in Yorkshire accents. A politician in Finland who was prosecuted for quoting the Bible wins her court case. And J.K. Rowling is subject to further online threats and abuse. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to the show. When I was 4 years old, I broke a window at the convent school I attended. The headmistress, a nun who had a reputation for her ferocity, beat me with her shoe as a punishment. By the way, this was long after corporal punishment had been made illegal, but I'm not going to sue a nun. I reckon that kind of thing would probably get you some extra days in purgatory. But it was very upsetting. It's the reason I've never been able to watch Sister Act. I can't even look at Whoopi Goldberg without reigniting my trauma. As kids in this convent school, we all used to wonder about our headmistress, why she was such a scary person, and why she would choose to become a servant of God. But we've all seen it, haven't we? Figures in authority, be they teachers, police, politicians or priests, who don't seem motivated by compassion, but rather power and status. Another word for such people is bullies. Now, I want to emphasise that, in my experience, the sort of people who devote their lives to education or law enforcement tend to be among the best sort of human beings. But there's always one or two who've clearly taken this career path because it provides them with the means to bully others and get away with it. And we see this on social media all the time. Many people have started to notice that the most vicious, uncharitable and inhumane behaviour is coming from those who post hashtags such as love wins or be kind. I mean, I've been dogpiled by the be kind lot more times than I can remember. To give an example from just a few days ago, so J.K. Rowling had shared a video of an experienced psychiatrist who was outlining his concerns about how gender clinics were often failing to recognise that autism and homophobia are so often connected with feelings of gender dysphoria. Not only a reasonable point to discuss, but a deeply compassionate one. And in response, a podcaster who calls himself a humanist replied with this: "You're a repulsive bigot, go F yourself, transphobic trash." Now, J.K. Rowling has never said anything transphobic. In fact, she's been openly supportive of trans rights. She has, however, received countless death and rape threats for acknowledging biological reality and standing up for the rights of women to have single-sex spaces. So why is it that someone who calls himself a humanist is behaving like an obnoxious thug? Similarly, whenever I'm attacked online, and I don't mean criticism here, I mean people who post threats or abuse, in virtually every single case, when I look at their profile, it contains either a rainbow flag or their preferred pronouns. And yet these symbols are meant to connote empathy and love and virtue. Now, to be clear, I think that many people who post pronouns or rainbow flags are decent people who are doing so because they believe it helps others to feel included. But no one has yet been able to explain to me why there is such a clear correlation between pronoun declaration online and unfeeling, uncaring and bullying behaviour. So here's an example of what I'm talking about.
I still search for the right hurt in the left brain as I kill turks with a left hook. Now I feel worse. JK, hope you fit in the hurt.
As I kill turfs with a left hook, now I feel worse. JK, hope you fit in a hearse. Well, it's hardly Noel Coward, is it? I mean, I could forgive the misogyny and the lack of talent if he could write some decent lyrics. But this kind of thing does reveal the extent of the hysteria surrounding these issues. And when Rowling posted a tweet about this rather cringe-making video, these are some of the responses she got from those who are apparently on the right side of history. There's this one: "I want J.K. Rowling to die so she can't make any more transphobic blood money and then her legacy will crumble in 2 seconds." Here's another one: "J.K. Rowling should kill herself." And this charming person retweeted Rowling and said, "I wouldn't hesitate to stab you in the street." And there are literally thousands of these. I mean, Rowling has said she could paper the house with the number of rape and death threats she gets, and I'm guessing that's a big house, right? And yes, you have guessed it, all of those examples I've just given are from accounts with pronouns in their bio. Those who claim to be kind, loving and inclusive and all about the empathy. Well, I'm not so sure about that. And this is what made me think of that nun at my school who beat me with her shoe. I think it's usually wise to assume the best of people and to acknowledge that many of those who fly the pride flag and post their pronouns do so with the very best of intentions. But while some people don the priestly robes out of a sense of duty, there are many others who do so as a disguise. I mean, what better way for a bully to get away with it by pretending to be virtuous? But from what I've seen online, if these people really are on the right side of history, the future looks pretty bleak. My studio guests this evening are comedians Francis Foster and Josh Howie. Josh, I don't know if you saw that video. It was absolutely crazy. It's sort of a music video, which is essentially a death threat, sort of wrapped up in a music video. And then, of course, that instigated a further pile-on J.K. Rowling again.
And Twitter hasn't banned it.
No, of course not.
And now, so a bunch of people also complained about it, and Twitter said, no, this doesn't go against our,
It's fine because it's in music form.
Or whatever.
Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah, hate and murder threats are fine when they're sung.
OK, well, I'll bear that in mind if ever I want to threaten someone's life. What do you think, Francis?
Well, the thing that I found the most incongruous about the entire thing is that she was saying she's going to knock her out, but J.K. Rowling would beat her in a fight.
Oh, yeah, clearly. Clearly. I mean, that is one flimsy individual. That's not somebody who could... I mean, I think anyone could beat that one in a fight.
Exactly. So if you're going to send death threats via Twitter, all I'm saying is you might be able to back it up.
Yeah, work out a bit first.
Exactly. Then do the death. No, don't do that.
No, don't. It's so bizarre to me that this is... And I do see this again and again. And look, like I said earlier, I don't think it is just to do with the fact that... having pronouns in your bio means you're going to be a nasty piece of work. It's just that whenever you see nasty behaviour, they always have it. They always have it. It's, in fact, if Twitter were to just eliminate all accounts with pronouns in the bio, it'd be a really lovely place. There's no getting around that.
Is that because everyone would agree with you, Andrew?
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Yeah. But but I don't disagree with pronouns. I use pronouns. They're part of the English language. Absolutely fine. And I don't mind people declaring them if they want to declare them. But I just don't get why that correlation exists.
It's the same with beards as well. Men with beards.
Oh, really?
That's what forced me to shave my beard.
But you've sort of got a half beard at the moment, haven't you?
Well, I'm feeling very cantankerous today. I'm about to start abusing people online. So.
Is that what well, someone did say to me once that people grow beards in order to disguise. It's like a psychological... They want to disguise their true nature,
Yes.
Because you've got an inherent kind of evil. Is that possible? You've got a big beard, sir. Is that why you've done it? Is that why you're...
Pure laziness.
Yeah. I get that. I completely get that. Let's get a few questions from the audience. Our first question is from Chris. Where is Chris? Oh, the beardy man. Chris.
Is it really Chris, though? We don't
Well, exactly.
Guaranteed to be Chris.
All right.
Should a statue be held responsible for someone's previous actions?
So the statue be held responsible? OK, so this will be to do with with David Livingstone. This is a news story this week. A statue of David Livingstone was going to be removed, or is going to be removed, due to his alleged connection to the slave trade, even though he was an abolitionist, was very much anti-slavery. The monument was identified because of Livingstone's defence of cotton masters, having worked at the age of 10 in a cotton mill, which had likely used West Indian cotton. Francis, what do you think? I mean, even though I don't agree, I understand going after the slave traders, the Edward Colstons of the world. These are the people who actually made money exploiting, in the most horrible and cruel way, these poor individuals. This is an abolitionist. This is someone who got rid of all that, right? So doesn't he get a bit of a pass?
No, that's the whole point of it. Once you've cancelled the big people, the people with the dodgy reputations, you can't stop there. You can't. You're an activist, mate. You need to keep on activating. Do you know what I mean? That's how it works.
So it's a supply and demand issue,
Yeah,
really.
It's a supply and demand issue. That's what happened with Jussie Smollett, didn't he? Yeah, because,
he
there
couldn't
wasn't...
find any homophobic racists, so he had to hire two people to behave and pretend.
And because he's progressive, he hired two black men to do it.
Good for him. No, that's good. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, the other part of that report was they also criticised the Glasgow City Council because at the time they'd invested in a company.
Right.
And that company, in the future, then started having ships for the slave trade. So it's they're criticising a company for investing in a company for what they did afterwards. So,
I'm very confused about all this, because there was a recent one at Imperial College in London where they're going to remove a statue, a bust actually, of Thomas Henry Huxley. Again, another abolitionist. They were trying to pull down a statue of Abraham Lincoln in America. I think he had something to do with freeing a few slaves, didn't he? Like, it's weird. And again, like I say, by all means, go after the slave trade. But, I don't even think you should tear those down because I sort of think that's part of our history too, even though it's not very nice. It's part of our history. But going after this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Talk me through the logic. What's going through people's heads?
They're mad.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes a bit more sense.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? They're grifters. And they've written this report, and it's gilding the lily. Like you say, it's never enough. Once you start down that road, no one's ever... Doesn't matter if you actually help to stop slavery, you're not pure enough. And that purity test will get and that's why it's going to start eating itself.
But why is it any connection? So any connection at all with the slave trade, which I think pretty much anyone, if you go back far enough, you'll find something. Why is it that it's kind of selective? The Guardian newspaper was founded by a man who made his fortune in the cotton trade.
Yeah.
When the Civil War was on, the Guardian supported the South and really had a go at Lincoln for freeing the slaves. So should we just ban the Guardian?
Yes.
Right, OK. Maybe I would get on board with that.
Yeah.
It's just quite funny when they have all these articles in the Guardian talking about how great it is we're tearing down statues. Like, you guys had better watch your step, right? Because you wouldn't be here if it weren't for the slave trade.
But you see, they've got the right opinions, and that's all that matters.
Is that what it is?
It's just literally all that matters, absolutely. Because, let's be fair, this is the home of the alt-right now, Andrew.
Is that right?
This is where we are.
It's such a misused term, isn't it?
It is.
But all of these publications, the Guardian, the New Statesman, they are just becoming propagandistic. That's all it is now.
But you say, it's such a misused term, but this is what this all is, because everything is racist. But once you say everything is racist, then how can you possibly discern what racism is? And the reality is you can't.
Yeah.
If everything has links to slavery, what, you're going to cancel everything?
Well...
Which is what they're doing.
I don't know. I've got, I walked past that statue of Oliver Cromwell outside Parliament. I think, oh, my ancestors, he had a go at them, he killed them. So should I...
Yeah, I thought he was great.
You thought he was good? But you thought he was good for precisely that reason.
Yeah.
Because he had a go at my lot.
Big fan.
Yeah.
Don't clip that.
This is the problem about this show, is often you could easily clip things out of context and completely just cancel you, destroy your career. I look forward to that. Anyway, let's have another question. This is from Barry. Where's Barry? Hello, Barry. Nice to meet you.
Are virtue signalling road decorations worth it if animals cannot walk over them?
Virtue signalling road decorations. People may not know what you mean, but I've talked about this a couple of times on the show, because there has been a spate of rainbow-coloured crossings, right? Instead of the zebra crossings, obviously got the pride flag, but not just the pride flag, the progress pride flag, which is sort of pride squared, because now you've got the sort of the trans triangle, the intersex circle. It's a total mess. It's really ugly. And the thing is, it's not just so guide dogs, for instance, cannot cross, or they find it difficult to cross these things. But so do horses. So the Met Police have said their solution to this, because the fact that this is actually, you see the clip now. These horses, these are police horses just approaching the pride flag. They don't know what it is. They're absolutely petrified.
To be fair, they're very homophobic.
They are very anti-gay horses.
No, transphobic, I think you'll find, Josh.
I think it's... No, the one on the right just doesn't like lesbians. OK. And there we go. And they can't... poor things, they can't deal with that. And so rather than, don't use rainbows on the ground, the Met Police are saying, let's retrain the horses so that they don't get spooked by the colours. Isn't that completely the wrong way around?
Yeah, of course. And this is actually, I think this is the perfect analogy of what's going on. It's people trying to be inclusive, trying to be right on, whether it's rewriting our language, getting rid of the word woman. We had zebra crossings that worked, and they worked well, and they were designed, and they worked well for a reason. If they didn't work, sure, let's look at it, and that's whatever. But they do these things as a sort of virtue signalling thing, and then it doesn't work out because they don't actually listen to anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just the message that's important.
And they're expensive.
Yeah.
Like, these things cost thousands and thousands of pounds. And then to retrain the horses, how are they going to do that? What are the electrotherapy? I don't know. How are they going to do this? What are they doing?
But the thing is, as well, on a really serious note, but blind dogs struggle to recognise these things.
They really do, yeah.
What, are you going to retrain every single blind dog, guide dog in this country?
Also, I don't know a single gay person who needed this or wanted this. Like, it makes us look stupid. It's like, what, couldn't we cross the road before? Like, it's really, really stupid.
Could you only identify that particular thing as the way to cross?
That's the only way. That's all I can see. Like, if you want to lead me somewhere, you just dangle that rainbow flag and I mesmerically follow it. That's what happens. It's unbelievably patronising. And it is kind of just using an element of our lives to score points, basically. It's mad. And actually, some of the police, they've now got rainbow cars. It looks like something out of Noddy. Like, it's just ridiculous. You can't fight crime when you're sort of dressed as a clown, can you?
No, it's. I mean, again, this investment of money and time and thought and all this stuff. as opposed to doing their actual job.
Just do your job. Right. Another question now from Chris. Chris.
Hi. Should pronouns be determined by race?
Should pronouns be determined by race? There's a good confluence there of two very interesting issues that we often broach on this show. And this is a top New York City health official has used different terms for white and minority mothers. So Dr. Michelle Morse, the Chief Medical Officer at NYC's Department of Health, is pushing a new birth equity initiative. Birth equity, there it is. So calls white mothers birthing people, but black and Hispanic mothers moms. What's going on there, Francis?
Well, first of all, they've spelt mum incorrectly, so that's a disgrace. Not having it. As a former teacher, that's made me very angry. Number two, I do think we should racialise pronouns because we racialise everything else.
We do, don't we?
So why not? Everything should be racialised, mate. Your cat, do you have a cat?
No.
Right, well,
I will get one.
Yeah,
and
that should be. We should racialise the cat. We should racialise everything.
I'll get a gender-neutral cat.
We should get a gender-neutral cat. The chairs can be chairs of colour.
Yeah.
It'll be wonderful.
I do think it's a bit mad.
No, it's not just a bit mad. But what it is it exposes the hypocrisy within the critical race theory sort of ideology, where there is racism. You know, it's the idea, I guess, is we want less racism. That's a good thing. But within critical race theory, it actually the logic that it goes to actually espouses racism.
So this is the point that I think a lot of people misunderstand, is that everyone wants less racism, right? But the way to tackle racism... Apart from racism. Yeah. But, you know, I don't know...
Love it. They love it, a bit of racism.
No, you're right. Racists, I will grant you, racists do like racism. It's kind of fundamental to their identity. But I don't know any racists, and they're you know, luckily they're not... They know that if they speak their mind in public, they get shunned, rightly so. But we all want less of it. And we all have the same goal. Critical race theory, I think, makes society more racist, ultimately, not less racist. So It doesn't work. I mean, can anyone seriously say, since the summer of 2020, when all of these critical race theory ideas have been implemented in schools and in politics and in our culture more generally, that things have got better? Can anyone seriously think that? Because it absolutely hasn't, in my view.
Because the problem is once you encourage everyone to look through a racial lens at everything, including themselves, then immediately you start seeing race in everything. And whereby you didn't think about it before, suddenly it's at the very forefront of your mind. I remember walking down the road and there was this black woman approaching me and I thought, I better stop and let her pass because I don't want to look racist.
Yeah, well, have you read Robin DiAngelo's new book, Nice Racism?
No, I haven't. I'm sure
it's a real page-turner. Yeah. So Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility quite famously and then wrote a follow-up, because that needed a sequel. It's called Nice Racism, and there's a bit in this book where she talks about over-smiling, and she says, if you smile too much at people of colour, it's quite racist, because you're not acknowledging your complicity in white supremacy. So don't smile at black people, basically. That's the way to tackle racism.
Wow.
I mean, she's insane. And she's a white woman, by the way. She's a white woman who gets 14 grand an hour to go into corporations and berate them all for their privilege. It's hilarious. She was the one who went into Coca-Cola and someone smuggled out a screenshot of her talk. And then you can see behind her on the wall, it says, my advice, try to be less white. That was her advice. This woman, honestly...
It's hard for Coca-Cola because it's obviously black.
Maybe that's why they invited her in, because the colour of the Coke is problematic. Do you remember they used
special edition?
You remember they used to do Tab Clear? Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's obviously shows the white supremacy that lies at the core of our society. The fact that it failed.
She would actually probably say that was true.
I've given her next talk. It's 14 grand.
That's her next book. Honestly, I can't wait to read it. Anyway, racist beverages. That'll be...
That'll be on next week's show, mate.
It probably will. No, it probably will. You know, I mean, the stuff that we joke about sometimes, when it becomes true, I just kind of think this birth equity idea. I remember doing a joke as the persona I do, talking about how, white people, you shouldn't have any more children because every time a white person has a baby, it decreases the percentage of ethnic minority people. And I actually think that's where they're sort of driving at this point. I honestly think they are. And it's so scary to me that when you become hyper-racialised, when you see race in everything, you do end up producing more racism. For instance, the American school in London. Did you see that they racially segregated kids for after-school activities? And that is the end point.
And the point of that school is it's one of the most expensive schools in the country. Of course. Any child who goes there is privileged, regardless of ethnicity. They are rich, and that is where their real privilege comes from.
Yeah, well, OK. Well, listen, it's very interesting to discuss. We could talk about this all night, but we better not. We've got another question from Jilly. Where's Jilly?
I'm here. Should Shakespeare be accent-free?
Should Shakespeare be accent-free? Is anything accent-free, though? So this is a story... No, I love this story, actually. So this is a theatre-goer walked out of a Shakespeare play in York, because the actors had Yorkshire accents, and we're not going to name the person. You know, this was a production of As You Like It. Demanded a refund, though. I mean, really committed. And the chief executive of York Theatre Royal said there was no chance they were going to get their ticket money back. Well, they were dissatisfied with the play. Why shouldn't they get their money back? What do you think of this?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. The fact that surely, and it was in York as well.
It was not only that. It was in York. It was a Yorkshire theatre company.
Yeah.
Yorkshire with Yorkshire people.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called. Yorkists playing Yorkies playing the roles. But the thing about this is, and I would like to flag this, is this just the case of like this is one person tweeting or one person doing something stupid and then it becomes a big story? Because it's not like loads of people are walking out and they're really angry, but it feels a little clickbaity, doesn't it?
I think that he was just looking for an excuse. He was like, oh, I don't really understand any of this. Oh, they've all got Yorkshire accents and whatever. That's what I think it is.
Actually, I think that might actually be it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I mean, Shakespeare, well, in Elizabethan England, they would have sounded closer to Yorkshire, or you know, than the sort of posh RP thing that a lot of people
do. You say
do.
so. You're the one who's educated here.
well, you know, there's a play called The Yorkshire Tragedy, which was entered into the Stationers' Register in 1608, attributed to William Shakespeare. It's a short play, many people think it wasn't him, that it was Middleton, but it could well have been him. So, you know, he potentially wrote a play set in Yorkshire. What are you going to do?
I rest my case, more educated.
I knew that doctorate in Shakespeare would come in handy somewhere, because really I haven't used it at all.
Well done.
Really haven't. A final question for the moment is from Andrea. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Very simple question. Is food sexist?
Well, I mean, yes, I think obviously food is sexist, but I know what this is. This is to do with the pub in Devon. It renamed a dish, as you know, of the ploughman's lunch. Ploughman's lunch, potentially sexist. They renamed it the ploughperson's lunch. This is, and again, this is another one of those, like, you know, I talk about wokeness and critical race theory and all those sorts of things. That this doesn't really matter in the end. You know, it's not a big deal that a lunch is now. It's just stupid, isn't it? It's just stupid.
I think the thing that's really offensive is that this cheese and bread cost £12.50.
That's
what really made me angry as I was reading the story.
But maybe ploughperson's lunch will be cheaper.
But they also, the same restaurant, they had Mum's chocolate mousse, and really they should rename it as Person with a Cervix chocolate mousse.
Or chest feeder's chocolate mousse.
Chest feeder's chocolate mousse.
It's gone.
I would never eat that. I would never eat that. It sounds horrible. But I mean, look. But this is one of those. This is one of those things. Like we always get these stories about these issues, and they're every day in the papers. And it's so easy to poke fun at them, and you think, well, it doesn't really matter, though, does it? And no, it doesn't really matter that one pub calls ploughman's lunch ploughperson's lunch, right? Because you snigger and you move on. But it's kind of a collective thing where all of these things, when you put them all together, and they're happening all over society, and suddenly women are called bleeders or people with a cervix, then it starts to matter, because then it tips over into kind of misogynistic territory, and it all sort of started somewhere. So it's worth sort of keeping an eye on this stuff. But I do think that's bloody ridiculous. But I would still eat a ploughperson's lunch.
Of course it's ridiculous. But then they say as well, they've changed it to recognising the amazing ladies. Well, then why not call it ploughwoman's lunch?
Oh, they said they were recognising the female farmers in the community.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they were gutted. So there was like, this is the thing. Were there any female farmers around saying, I'm so upset that you've got a ploughman's lunch? What about us? We're out there toiling the field. What is it farmers do? Milking the goats. What? You know.
Educated.
I don't know about agriculture. I don't know about that kind of thing. It's an odd one, isn't it? I don't think it's worth getting het up about. But look, just devoted 4 minutes of the show to it anyway. So I'm a hypocrite, yay! After the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be talking to author Caroline Fisk about what has been called the most significant female movement since the suffragettes. See you in a couple of minutes.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
On Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is the legendary psychotherapist and author who helped Ronnie O'Sullivan, Bradley Wiggins and Sir Chris Hoy to achieve sporting greatness. Professor Steve Peters, the author of the international bestseller The Chimp Paradox, is live at 10. In The Big Question, is Britain broke? Plus my all-star panel, and in my big opinion, eco-zealots are not campaigners, they're terrorists. See you at 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Here's a question for you. What is a woman? It used to be a very simple one to answer, but not anymore, it seems. A few days ago, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer seemed to be stumped when he was asked if a woman can have a penis. This programme has regularly focused on the controversial issue of transgender athletes taking part in female sport. Now, 3 groups have got together to lead a fight back. Sex Matters, the Women's Rights Network and Women Uniting have launched what one of the activists has called the most significant women's movement since the suffragettes. Caroline Fisk is the head of Women Uniting and she's joined me in the studio. Caroline, welcome.
Hi.
So I'm very interested in your movement and I'm getting a sense that women have sort of got to the end of their tether, they're getting sick of this, and people are coming together from all sides of the political spectrum over this issue. Is that your view on this?
OK, so I'm Caroline Fisk and I'm part of Conservatives for Women, and so I'm not the head of Women Uniting. What Women Uniting is, women from across political parties have come together. So there's women from Labour, Lib Dems, Scottish Nationals, Conservatives, Greens.
Yes.
And we've all put aside our differences and said, some of the foundations of our society are under attack.
Yeah.
And so when the foundations are under attack, you know, you say, right, put aside your differences and focus on these.
This is very interesting to me because, you know, I've met a lot of feminists of late. Mostly, I would say, feminists appear to come from a left-wing background, sort of overwhelmingly, actually. But they've been working with feminists from the right and other people from the right as well. And it seems as though those distinctions of right and left have gone out of the window. It's almost as though until we can sort out this matter of things that are real, of reality and truth, until we can sort that out, we can't really debate all those other issues.
Well, so I was talking to some left-wing feminists and they were saying, you know, things like the gender pay gap, pension pay gap, and we all agreed we can argue about those later.
Yeah.
And we look forward to the day when we are discussing and arguing about those things because it will mean that we've won this fight.
Yes.
But for the moment, the very foundations of our society are under attack. Science. We all know that there's only 2 sexes.
Yeah.
You know, my view is that everybody in this debate knows that there's only 2 sexes. Sex is not a spectrum. There are men and women. So not only is science under attack, but then free speech is under attack, truth is under attack. Yeah. And so we need to fight for these things, come back to our other, you know, debates later.
And it seems to be something that affects politicians from all sides of the spectrum as well. I mean, Rishi Sunak was struggling the other day to answer the question, what is a woman? We've had the Joe Biden's nominee for the Supreme Court said she couldn't define a woman because she's not a biologist. Well, I know some 5-year-olds who could do that, and they're not biologists either.
OK, so again, like I would challenge everybody, when you're sitting on the tube or anywhere, I would say across my life, you know, it's so rare that you look at somebody and you can't sex them within a couple of minutes. Oh, sorry, a couple of seconds. You know, we can instantly sex each other. And to me, that shows it's evolutionary and that sex matters. That it matters for the safety of women. Probably in evolutionary terms, it mattered for the safety of men.
Yes.
So actually, this movement is even trying to undermine our very senses.
Yes.
So that's the sense in which the foundations of our society are under attack.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're coming together to say, we've got to stop this. And so just back to your thing about the politicians, I mean, it's embarrassing and staggering that our leaders are too scared, too captured by an ideology to say in simple terms what a woman is.
Well, is it though that less that they're captured by the ideology and more that they're afraid of it? I mean, because when I watch these people, I think a reason why a lot of us are losing patience is we all know they know the answer.
Yeah.
We all know that Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak and the rest of them know what a woman is and know that women don't have penises. They know this.
Yeah.
And they can't say it. And so therefore that's worse in a way, because if they'd just been captured by this delusional ideology and they genuinely believed it, that would be one thing. We can say you're wrong. But the fact that we can see that they're not willing to be honest and to say what we all know to be true, that to me is almost worse.
I mean, listen, I think practically everyone who involves themselves in this debate is horrified and staggered by the cowardice. That people who put themselves up to lead this country, to lead all of us, our democracy, are cowardly when it comes to this issue. Sex matters. It matters for all of our dignity, our privacy. It matters for women's safety. Again, I just go back to my phrase, it's a foundational issue. And to see our leaders scared of it is, staggering.
But I do understand it as well. I mean, when I talked earlier about some of the threats that J.K. Rowling gets online, and of course, J.K. Rowling, a darling of the left, and yet she's now called fascist and right-wing and all the rest of it. But some of the nature of the threats, and people think it's just a few people online. It's not. It's thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, these things have been collated. It is intimidating.
It's intimidating.
I can't help but notice that it's more severe against women, or at least that's the way it seems to me.
I think that's absolutely right. Today, Women Uniting have come together from left, right, as I say, Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives. So today I was feeling a little bit under attack. As a Conservative involved in this, and I actually suddenly stepped back and thought to myself, there's some really high-profile right-wing men who've joined in this debate, Douglas Murray, and I don't think they come under such attack. So there is something going on here. I think there's a real misogyny coming out, that women are actually asserting our rights. And so there's some attack going on against us for that.
I've heard Douglas Murray say that exact same thing, that he doesn't. He's been saying this for a while, and he hasn't had anywhere near the vitriol. I mean, he gets a lot of vitriol, to be fair. But not to the extent of the sort of sexualised threats, I think, that you see against women who are brave enough to speak about it. But, I mean, do you think that we can... I mean, you wrote a very interesting article quite recently about the British Library. And I do wonder whether... And this was about Stonewall's infiltration of the British Library, one of the many institutions that it managed to get into. Can you talk through what was going on there? Why did you write that article? What was it about?
Okay, so because of gender ideology, I've started to spend my Sunday afternoons making FOI requests,
Freedom of information.
So I look forward to the day that I'm not doing this again.
Because they take a while to come through. That's exhausting.
So, you get all these FOI requests back showing that institution after institution is signed up to Stonewall's diversity index scheme. And we've all read a lot about that. And I mean, honestly, some of the extraordinary things that Stonewall suggests to our institutions, things like people should be allowed to wear different pronoun badges on different days.
Okay, so there can be a man on one day and a non-binary person on the other day, and a woman on another day. Okay.
And by the way, as a Conservative, I believe in freedom, but the idea is then that everybody has to sort of go along with that.
Right.
And to me, that's compelled speech. We can't ever go forward as a society with compelled speech. But what was different about the British Library was I came across this training program, this Zoom session, £1,500 for a Zoom session where Stonewall, this originally radical organisation, an organisation of liberation, was doing security training for the British Library to help the British Library security staff manage gender-critical women.
To manage them. So wait a minute, so let me just be clear. So Stonewall has said, give us £1,500 and we're going to lecture you about how to handle women.
Yeah.
Women who do what? What did they envisage?
So Stonewall presented a number of scenarios that they would go through in the Zoom. A woman enters the British Library wearing a T-shirt that a trans-identifying person might find offensive.
Am I guessing?
What would you as security do?
I'd say, well, you're wearing a T-shirt, that's your choice, none of my business, move on, please, right?
Yeah, well, as I said, we don't know what happened in the training session, but Stonewall was giving the security staff advice as to how to handle this woman.
Now, I know.
So actually, in my article, I ran through some scenarios about how ridiculous this might be, like button up your cardigan.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
I know the T-shirt you're talking about, though. It'll be the one that says woman, adult, human, female.
Yeah.
The dictionary definition.
Yeah.
And if a library is upset by a dictionary definition, something is really going on wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, another training scenario proposed by Stonewall was there are stickers in the loos.
Yes.
Security. How might you handle those?
I would say just remove them as you would any other sticker.
Well, in my article, I suggested soap and water.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? The cleaning staff probably know how to remove stickers.
They do.
Yet the British Library seemingly paid Stonewall to run this security training. And when you see that happening, you realise this is an institution that's absolutely captured.
Yes, of course.
And we can't go on like this. It's ridiculous.
Because it can't be the case that they don't know how to deal with violent protests or people who are... The security will already know how to do that. This additional training serves no other purpose than to bolster the ideological presence of Stonewall within the institution.
Yeah, and ultimately to intimidate gender-critical women.
Yes.
And as I say, that's why we've united from across the political spectrum. We won't be intimidated because this is, as I say again, about the foundations of our society. And it's about the protection of women's rights, and it's also about the safeguarding of vulnerable children who are being, persuaded that they were born in the wrong body and going on to harm themselves. So all of us will fight. We're not going to give up now. And what we say also is the era of no debate is over. We're talking about this now, and, we're out there just to bring it out into the public domain. Keep talking about it.
Well, Caroline Fisk, that's a fantastic note to end on, I think. Thank you so much for
joining.
joining. Well, sorry, the time is short.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
After the break on Free Speech Nation, it's time for Devil's Advocate, and this week my panel will be arguing whether or not Will Smith has the right to be a slapper. See you in 2 minutes.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Every night at 11 on GBNews, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my beautiful panel, Francis Foster and Josh Howie. We're going to deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So any problems you've got, any problems at all, just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk and we're going to solve your life. We will sort it all out. Trust me, I've seen it happen. So this part of the show is called Devil's Advocate. This is our panellists are going to be discussing one of the burning issues of the day. Now, this week, we're talking about whether Will Smith is right to have slapped Chris Rock. So first, here's a reminder of what happened at the Oscars.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? that was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yes.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
I'm going to, okay?
I mean, good for Chris Rock for retaining his composure there. I thought he did it remarkably well. But anyway, we're going to argue whether that was right or wrong. For goodness sake. I'm surprised they didn't remove it. Why did they not remove him? It's so weird. Can I just whack you around the... Anyway, look, we're not going to experiment. We probably could.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, we're going to argue about whether that was right or wrong. And first, arguing in support of Will Smith is Francis Foster.
Woo! Thank you. Look, I'm pro Will Smith, and I'll tell you why, right? If your wife had been going around banging half of Hollywood, you'd be... Listen, you'd be that angry as well. Can I say the word banging or not?
I think you can if you're alluding to percussion.
OK, fantastic. Right, if she'd been... if your wife had been going out doing percussion with other men, you'd be pretty furious as well. Do you know what I mean? So, number one. And number two, what Chris Rock did is he made fun of somebody who was part of the disabled community. As many people pointed out, Jada is disabled because she has alopecia. It's absolutely true. This is what a lot of people have said. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not easy being a slaphead, OK? It's really not that easy. Josh will say it as well, right? And here, look, and here's the thing. And here's the thing, right? Have we booked Josh on GB News because he's funny? No. It's because he's part of a minority, and it's a minority that are under threat. And what Will Smith was doing is he was standing up for minorities when he did that. Good on him. More people need to be slapped as a result.
Thank you, Francis Foster. Now, and to give the alternative point of view, it's Josh Howie.
Thank you. I'm feeling slightly under pressure representing all bald people now that I have to be funny. Look, I could say that the reason why it was wrong was because it showed the hypocrisy of the Hollywood elite, because it was the ultimate cancellation. It's where the endpoint, the logical endpoint of this world that we live in now, where if you hurt someone's feelings, then it goes to cancellation and then it goes to physical violence. There are reasons why, and also just the fact that everybody there was willing to go along with it. It just showed how they are a bunch of cowards and they are a bunch of bullies themselves. But the real reason why the slap was wrong was because it has ruined Will Smith movies for me, because it was such a sort of wimpy move. I think he should have punched him. That's the way I see it. Now, every time I'm going to watch like Men in Black, it's just going to be like, it's not the same if you sort of imagine him like going up to the alien and slapping the alien, or Bad Boys is slapping the drug dealers. It's just like Independence Day. Like, it's just, those movies have been ruined for me. It's taken away part of my childhood, and I think it should have been a headbutt. Possibly a bazooka, anything but a slap, because he just didn't have the belief in his convictions. That's why I think it was wrong.
Josh Howie, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because a slap, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit Danny LaRue, isn't it? It's not action hero, is it?
No, that's why his career's ruined now, because we can't see him as a sort of.
But has he apologised? Because well, I don't understand, because he hasn't apologised for Wild Wild West, which I would have thought that should be the priority. But has he apologised yet?
No, he hasn't apologised. And another thing is, this is a man who trained for many months to play the part of Muhammad Ali.
Right.
So you got trained to box. And then he goes up and throws a slap.
Well, do you know,
I always said he was a rubbish actor. I mean, this proves it.
Well, someone made the point the other day that if he had closed his fist, then he would have had to have been arrested. But you can, for some reason, an open slap, apparently that's better. Apparently. I don't know why.
I don't know. Surely that's still surely that. I don't see where. I do like how the police said we have been made aware of an incident or whatever.
We saw it! Everyone saw it. It was only transmitted to what? How many people watch the Oscars?
A billion people around the world.
I think it's more like a couple of hundred these days. But I mean, but in this country, of course, common assault can be defined as even the slight. That could be common assault, me just touching you in that way.
Sue him.
You know?
Well, silence is now violence, so...
That's right. Yeah, there's those signs on the tube saying don't look at people in a certain way.
Yeah.
Stop policing my eyes, you know. But that's what... But I did a show at the Edinburgh Fringe many years ago, about 10 years ago, and a guy threw beer in my face in the show, and it was filmed. We happened to be filming it that night, and it got put on the internet. And it sold out the rest of my run, because it was really outrageous. Like, this guy just squared up to me and threw beer right in my face. And then a woman on the front row had a panic attack, and I had to spend the whole show dealing with her because she was the one who was upset, right? But the thing is, that is actually common assault, throwing the beer in the face. I remember at the time thinking, if he'd have punched me, it would have sold even quicker. You know, that would have been quite good. But you know, it's still online. It's the only clip of me online doing stand-up. And the problem with that is, every now and then, someone comes along to my stand-up shows and says, "Oh, we'll throw some beer at you." I'm like, that's not what I do. That's not my shtick. You know, that's not my.
Did you call the clip "Audience Member Destroys Comedian"?
That's what I should have said. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah. But it was before those days when we had that kind of language. But do you think there is a possibility, and a lot of people have talked about this, that this whole incident will, in a sense, ennoble those who wish to perform violence on comedians they like? Do you think that's...
Do you know the most egregious example of that whole discussion was comedians coming out and saying, "I agree with Will Smith"?
Yeah, that's mad.
You just think, what?
Yeah, because it gives them a license. It's basically saying, if you don't like my joke, you can hit me.
Yeah.
You know? And The Guardian had an amazing take. They were saying, of course, they were saying, I mean, it's just not a serious publication anymore, let's get over it. I mean, he said, any criticism of Will Smith is rooted in anti-blackness.
Yeah.
No, it's that you shouldn't hit people, Guardian. Don't hit people. Why is that so difficult to understand?
Yeah.
It's insane. Anyway, look, we're going to carry on. We've got a couple of other stories that I want to touch on in this section. A teacher has been suspended after allegedly using a coffee mug which had a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad on it. A spokesperson for Colchester Royal Grammar School said an image had been shared online of an individual appearing to use a mug with an offensive image. They added that, if necessary, robust action would be taken. I mean, you know, what do you make of this? Do you think this man should have been fired for having a mug?
I don't think he should have been fired, but I do think... I mean, you're playing with fire, aren't you? If you're going to do, like, a comedy mug, my first instinct wouldn't be to go to the Prophet Muhammad, do you know what I mean?
No.
It can sort of divide the room, you know?
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard it, Cam. What do you make of this?
It's cool. I believe it's from a cartoon series called Jesus and Muhammad or some sort of stuff.
Okay.
I just wonder if it was bought by his kids for, like, it's basically the worst Father's Day present ever. Like, why aren't we eating dinner tonight? Because you got me fired.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, you know, what with the atrocities that we've seen with Charlie Hebdo, with Samuel Paty, it does make me think that actually when those things happen, we should be showing those cartoons. We should be saying, look, it's not okay for people to murder people for their freedom of expression.
Well, the maddest thing I read last week was a woman in, I believe it was in Pakistan, who was murdered for blasphemy because a man dreamed that she had blasphemed the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, I mean, that's really scary stuff.
That is,
it's really scary stuff. But on the other hand, I suppose in the workplace, you can't have provocative mugs. Generally, like any form of, like, even we're not talking about blasphemy here. If I had a mug that had, I don't know, a naked person on or a slur.
But this whole, every subject that we seem to be talking about is the result of a society that's lost common sense.
Right.
You know, in any other situation, normal situation, 10 years ago in a school, the head teacher would have come up to you and gone, really?
Yeah,
look,
exactly.
You know, I think it's for the best that you don't use this mug, you can use whatever else, other mug you want. You know, it's going to alienate people, it's going to upset people, it's going to stop some kids from being able to engage with the lesson. Why not? If you have those views, great. Maybe don't put it in a mug in a professional place of work.
You'd have a conversation, right? You'd have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. And there would be no need to have any disciplinaries involved. It would just be two human beings talking to each other and resolving the issue.
Exactly.
But now everything gets escalated and blown up out of all proportion.
There is something culturally going on about this. I mean, I remember when there was that incident with William Sitwell, who was writing for Waitrose Food He was the editor of Waitrose Food magazine. And some vegan had contacted him, a vegan journalist, saying, I want to write a vegan article. And he wrote back some really facetious, silly thing like, oh, you should do something how we should force-feed vegans meat or so. It was something silly like that. And instead of saying, I'm a bit upset by that, can we talk about it? She screenshot it, put it online. She got a big sort of loads of retweets. And so it's this thing of like not being able to say, look, as human beings, we make mistakes. Can we have conversations about it? We cause offence sometimes. You offend me all the time, Josh. You know,
Thank you very much.
But we resolve it. We sit down and we have a cry and we talk about it, don't we?
Well, no, I mean, you just go away and you're very passive-aggressive and you don't book me in for
I do that sometimes, that's true. I want to have a look at this last story if we've got time before the break. A barrister who lost his job for tweeting that Muslims played a central role in the dying of free speech won his appeal against a £500 fine. So this is John Holbrook, who was sacked by Cornerstone barristers and was then fined by the Bar Standards Board. However, he's won his appeal against the fine. He has accused the Bar Standards Board of being a playground bully. And again, you know, we do have this issue. It comes back to a free speech issue. But I suppose in this instance, it's about, can you say things in your own private life on social media that might, well, what's the phrase they use? Put a company in disrepute. Teachers get that a lot. I mean, you were a teacher, weren't you, Francis?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And I remember when I was a teacher, there was a clause in the contract, must do nothing that will bring the school into disrepute. But that's my weekends gone. You know, like, I mean, that's that. What am I supposed to do?
But here's the thing. You didn't put your weekends online.
I didn't, no.
You see, and that's the problem, is now that everybody has become a public persona, and when you become a public persona, then you become a representative of the company online, and then you say something like that, and then the company then goes, well, you're bringing us into disrepute.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to common sense again, though, doesn't it? Because, I mean, I think, like, I should be able to tweet my opinions and my views and all the rest of it, but I imagine if I started tweeting some really horrendous stuff online, I imagine my employer here would say, you can't do...
Give you another show.
Yeah. Extend my show by another 2 hours, exactly.
All you would need to do, Andrew, is just set up another account, you know, maybe call it a character, and then you can tweet it from there.
That's what I'll do.
I do think on the positive side, what's happened with this gentleman is that now all his friends know what mug to buy him for Christmas.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's true, and if anything happens to us, I want that bloke representing me.
There we go. It's all worked out nicely. Great. Well, coming up on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be showing you an exclusive clip from my podcast this week. And that's with the author of Brown Girl Like Me, Jaspreet Kaur. Don't go away.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. On my upcoming podcast episode, I am joined by Jaspreet Kaur, who is the author of a new book called Brown Girl Like Me. Jaspreet is a history teacher, a writer, spoken word artist, and also a research fellow at Birkbeck University's Centre for British Political Life. We talked about a lot of things, including the difficulties around trying not to offend people in the modern age. Here's a preview for you.
There's different types of microaggressions, from ones that are unconscious, they're not intentional, it's just a thought that they've had or an idea that they thought was okay and they've been doing this for many years. It's not, and I think that word intention is really important. What is somebody's intention behind it? Perhaps their intention wasn't to offend, but that's just how it came out, or that's just what they thought was okay.
Yes.
All the way up into a point where it's a micro assault, where it's like, nah, that was intentional. You were trying to be horrible or make someone feel small or be mean or abusive. So there's a spectrum of how bad they can be. But ultimately it's us educating ourselves on what things are okay to say, what things aren't okay to say, and coming back to our intention. And that's when sometimes I recognize when these microaggressions happen, what is somebody's intention behind it? Was their intention to be mean to me, or did they just not know better? And how can I help them on that?
Sometimes you'll never know because it's what's going on in someone else's head.
Yeah, this is just human behavior. Yeah.
I suppose the worry I have is sometimes malevolence is assumed. If I can give you an example, I read an article recently about a London theatre where one of the backstage stagehands, they're moving around in the dark, they're moving stuff around. There's a very tall black actor in front of them and he asks him to move and he says his name, but he says the name of a different black actor in the cast.
Okay.
He was fired for that and was accused of racism. Now, of course, that strikes me as an ungenerous interpretation of what happened there. He couldn't see who it was. He's standing behind him in the dark. It was an accident. That could easily happen. But there was an assumption that he just couldn't tell the black actors apart. Can you see how that's a sort of unfair overreaction to, and people that creates a kind of fear then of what can I say, what should I say, that kind of thing.
Obviously, I don't know exactly what happened in that situation, and none of us will know exactly how that.
No, nor do I.
Yeah, none of us will know exactly what happened in that circumstance. But I can appreciate why this makes some people feel nervous. This whole conversation makes people feel nervous. Even bringing up the topic of microaggressions sometimes just makes people feel uncomfortable because they feel they're being attacked by it.
Right.
But this is why we need to be discussing it more. This is why we do need to be talking about it more, so that we can deal with these situations better. I've done a lot of work with even now corporate companies who want to understand this better now and diving into microaggressions a little bit more, because it used to be kind of a tick box exercise of, okay, let's have like one session on microaggressions or unconscious bias. We've done that and we've ticked that box. But now a lot of these companies are recognizing that, okay, no, we need to be building this into our culture, our ethos of being more inclusive, being more diverse. This needs to be a top-down approach. This needs to be in HR. This shouldn't just be a D&I network that covers it all in our companies anymore. This needs to be a part of the ethos of a company, so that we can do this all better and people come to work feeling like they're included and accepted. And
I would agree that I'm all for that. But some of the policies that are interpreted as microaggressions, so for instance, Robin DiAngelo in her new book talks about how over-smiling, she says, over-smiling at people of colour, it can be an aggressive thing to do because you're not, I mean, it strikes me as absurd, actually. If you smile at someone, suddenly that can be interpreted as you compensating for your complicity in a white supremacist system. That's her argument. I mean, is that fair?
I guess it depends where where the argument's coming from. I don't know that one specifically, but I can resonate with experiences where I have been treated overly nice.
Okay.
And you feel that it's different to maybe someone else that's there. And it's really hard to describe what this like, because it is just a feeling. And this isn't me saying that person is racist, and this isn't me saying that person's a bad person. But sometimes I can feel someone's treating me a little bit differently. So maybe a little bit of that, of being overly accommodating or overly nice, because they're going out of their way to not seem.
But there's an assumption within that, though, isn't there? That you're assuming they're treating you differently, or maybe...
Again, it's just this feeling sometimes.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying this happens all the time, but sometimes you just recognise it. And who knows what the answer is to that question. Maybe that person was just being really nice to you because they were just being really nice. They wanted to be really nice. But yeah, sometimes it's just this feeling sometimes, and it makes you question it. But
I suppose that's what I'm getting at, is like, it invites you to assume the worst.
Yeah.
Sometimes this discourse invites that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just people being nervous. Sometimes it's people being anxious just because that's who they are. Sometimes it might be someone who's just being overly nice, or it's these situations are difficult.
Well, you mentioned a specific one, which is the someone describing you as articulate, right?
Yeah.
And I can see how that can be very patronising.
Yeah.
But then there was the recent case of Priyam Vadagopal at Cambridge, who accused a historian, I can't remember his name now, I've written it down, David Abalafaya, because he described another black academic as eloquent. He was being complimentary, and she didn't state, but she implied he was being racist. But then she herself had described Benjamin Zephaniah as eloquent in an article 2 years before.
Okay.
You know, if someone describes me as eloquent, I'm like, great. I take that as a compliment. I take it for what it is.
Again, it's the intention. It's the intention behind it. And what I meant by that specific example, it's how it's said to me. It's in the tone it's sent. And it's literally that. It's the tone, it's the intention of how it's said. That same sentence could be said to me, and I will feel a complete different way depending on just how it's said. When it is in this kind of slightly shocking, surprised tone.
Oh yeah, I see.
Oh, you're really articulate.
Oh, you can actually say, I get that. Yeah.
That's where the feeling of like, oh, that doesn't feel quite nice. Why are they suggesting that I'm not? And there's a number of layers to that. That could be class related, that could be race related, that could be gender related. Like, I don't know where that particular comment could have been coming from, but again, it's that intention behind it, of how it was said to me, and that tone of how it's said. Or even the other really popular one of what Afua Hirsch calls the question of where are you from? And sometimes that question can just be, so where are you from?
Yeah.
And that might be me saying, oh, I'm from West London now, or I'm from East London, or I'm from London. But when it's like, where are you from, or where are you really from? Trying to then dig into the fact that, well, you're not from here, so where are you actually really from? So it's, how do you say these questions? How do you approach these questions? I'm not offended if somebody does ask, so where are you from? And I say, I'm from wherever. And if they then ask the question of, so where is your family from? And then want to know kind of what my background is, I'm not actually offended by that question. It's just how it's sometimes said.
Yes, because that could be just someone expressing an interest in...
where have my family come from? And
it's an interesting one, because obviously I'm never asked that question. And I spoke to a friend of mine about it, and I said to her, how often does this happen? And she says, oh yeah, it does happen quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's that secondary question. It's not the where are you from, because I ask everyone where they're from.
Yeah.
It's where are you really from, right? Now, I can't imagine ever saying that, and I can't imagine what kind of person would do that, because it's so obviously insinuating all sorts of things. You know, it's a bit psychotic, actually. But
I'm glad you think that. Yeah.
Well, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. You're making somebody feel a bit awkward. You're making someone feel like they don't belong there, or
So how often does that happen?
It happens often.
And is it strangers? Is it like...
It's strangers. It's in places of even in academic institutions, I've felt this. It's in places of even in leadership programs I've been involved in. I've felt this in quite a few places that this question comes up. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good example of somewhere where I think we'll both agree that's a problem. Like, I just don't think But I'd like to think that's not the norm. I'd like to think most people are a bit more... Because we all know people from different backgrounds and stuff. We don't go around...
And it's the point you were about to mention, that you wouldn't actually ask that person. If you were having this conversation with a white person, would you ask it in that same way?
I would say, where are you from?
Yeah, you'd say where you're from, but you wouldn't question past that.
And you can listen to my whole conversation with Jaspreet Kaur on my podcast, which is called Free Speech Nation, the podcast. That goes live right at the end of this show. That's at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do as well. It's just past 8 o'clock. You're watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Right then, let's get to some more topics. So we selected a few earlier. This week, a Disney executive in charge of content said they wanted at least half of the characters in its productions to be LGBTQIA+, or from racial minorities by the end of the year. General Entertainment President Kerry Burke said during a company-wide Zoom call that Disney must be more inclusive. And Disney's diversity and inclusion chief, Vivian Ware, said they no longer address theme park visitors as ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, but instead as dreamers and friends. OK, look, it's too easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's just too easy. What do we...
Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, and They Them Mouse.
They Them Mouse, yeah. What do you... I mean, look, again, I'm almost like just so over this now. It's endless, isn't it? It's interminable.
Well, I was looking forward to, now that the whole COVID thing seems to be coming to an end, to going to Euro Disney.
Right.
This has made me re-question, maybe I'll do Thorpe Park.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah, do that, exactly. Or one of the zoos or something like that.
So something like that,
Something. Gulliver's Kingdom, that's one.
Yeah, but LGBTQIA. This is the new, so I've missed out the IA.
Well, there's a real problem with that, actually, because they're saying that they want 50% of their characters to be LGBTQIA plus or whatever, right? Yeah. The problem is that there was a recent survey that showed that up to 40% of young American people identify as queer, as the Q, and of course most of those are straight, aren't they? Yeah. They're straight. So, you're going to... So basically, they already have 100% representation in Disney films of LGBTQIA+. Because it's very strange to me that straight people are identifying in to this classification, almost like they really want a bit of the oppression. Like, it's so odd.
Well, have you seen the straight flag? This is the funniest thing in the world. Has anybody here seen it?
I have seen it. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's a beige flag.
Beige. But it's boring.
Brilliant.
It's boring.
Brilliant. It's more exciting to be gay.
Well, is that all it is?
Yeah, I think so. It's trendy, you look better, you know what I mean? Gay men, on average, tend to have higher IQs than straight men, so why wouldn't you identify?
I'm fully aware of that. They're more charismatic. And a bit like... But I think if you're going to do it, just commit. Yeah. Have sex with other men.
Now you're going too far. Jeez Louise.
But I don't know. I think this is a very odd thing from Disney. I've read recently that isn't Lightyear, the Disney film, they're going to bring back the gay kiss that they took out. There was a gay kiss, people complained. But this is interesting because the real reason why Disney take those scenes out is because they can't then sell the films in certain countries where if you kissed another man, they might chop your head off. That sort of happens. So maybe that's really what it's about.
But there's this hypocrisy everywhere. There's this hypocrisy with Disney. There's this hypocrisy with sport. The World Cup is going to be held in Qatar. Harry Kane during the Euros wore the rainbow flag on his captain's armband. Is he going to do it in Qatar? Is he?
Now, I would be impressed if he did. Like, that's my point about this stuff. Like, the rainbow flag used to mean something, and it actually used to be quite a positive image, particularly when things were bad. When I was young and you couldn't be openly gay in public because you might get beaten up. And that time has gone away. So the flag isn't needed here anymore. Like, I think we just ditch the flag now. Use it in the countries where you can be killed and arrested for being gay. That's where you need the flag. But the corporations don't do that. No. They fly the flag over here and then they just silently put the flag away when we're in Saudi Arabia.
Like Disney, they ain't criticising the Chinese government over their treatment of Uyghurs.
No, they're using their facilities.
Yeah, exactly. They're totally happy to be in that region and making Mulan tour and all of that stuff. So,
of course.
I mean, it's about money. That's what why these companies do, and this makes them look good.
Yeah.
Do you know, whenever I see these quotas and they say want 50% of people to be gay on television, I'm like, why do you want less gay people on TV? Because literally,
it's a very good point.
I don't know any straight people on TV, Andrew.
No, there are very few, and Hollywood is so gay. Hollywood is so gay. Anyway, let's move on. The next topic is about that 2022 phenomenon, Wordle. Now, I must admit, I was sceptical, but I do now, basically, at the stroke of midnight, I'm on to the next Wordle. I do this. But then the New York Times took Wordle, didn't they? They paid a lot of money and they bought Wordle. And I did start to notice that certain words were no longer... You couldn't use certain words. And they are woke-washing Wordle. So basically, if you try and put in certain words at the start, right? I tried the word wench, and they wouldn't. They said it's an invalid word.
Wow.
And slave, you couldn't put slave. I think slave, you still can't use the word, but it is a 5-letter word. So there are also. What do you think of it? Do you think they should be trying to engineer the way we speak through Wordle? Is that?
It wouldn't surprise me that the New York Times would be trying to engineer the way we speak. Number one. Number two, it's also an exercise in self-preservation, isn't it? Because there'll be one glitch, and someone will put in some type of racial epithet that Wordle will accept. Someone will screenshot it. It will go on Twitter, and then it will go viral.
Yeah, maybe that will happen, but I just think this is an odd way. It's like it's like policing Boggle. Or something,
What is Wordle?
Oh, for goodness sake!
No, I can't. I did do Wordle once, and I got it in 2, and I was like,
"Yeah,
I'm out.
You're too
I'm
smart.
I'm done, mate.
It's not enough for you. Are you a Scrabble man? Can you do Scrabble?
No, but I am. I'm into my board games.
You are into your board games. Not into Scrabble though.
No, not word games, like mathy sort of logic games.
Oh,
very, very geeky.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's move on now. This is because board games, let's face it, it's not really televisual, is it? That's more Josh's free time.
When I play my board games, I've got my beige flag in the background.
Yeah. So Bruce Willis has announced his retirement from acting this week after he was diagnosed with aphasia. The Razzies, which is the award ceremony for the worst movies, was very quick to respond, and it decided to rescind Bruce Willis's Worst Performance Award in light of the news, which I think is quite sensitive. Nominations for this year's Golden Raspberries were announced in February this year. Willis had been given his own category titled Worst Performance by Bruce Willis in a 2021 movie with a short list of 8 movies, which is funny. So this is the question: is it right? Are they actually in a way patronising him by taking that away?
Yeah, that's a funny joke.
It's a
joke, funny, and that's the whole point of those awards.
Yeah,
it's a bit of it. It's not malicious. And I guess now he really has been packing in these rubbish movies, make as much money as possible.
Sure.
I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Nicolas Cage did. He's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the excuse of
no, that's true.
Retire.
He's just got terror. He just can't say no for some reason. I don't know what that Wicker Man thing was about. But what do you make of this?
Well, I don't agree with it, and I'll tell you why. So, for instance, let's say Adolf Hitler had erectile dysfunction.
OK, that's not a sentence I was expecting to hear tonight. OK.
Would it mean that we should not be able to take the mick out of Adolf Hitler any less, or take the mick out of him because he couldn't perform in the bedroom?
Oh, I see. So you think you shouldn't be immune from criticism or mockery simply because...
Yeah,
I mean, look, they were just being sensitive, ultimately, but it is just a bit of fun. I mean, the Razzies are... I think the best one I saw was when Halle Berry won. And Halle Berry won for her performance in Catwoman. And she gave this really... She cried. She replicated her Oscar win.
Did she?
Yeah. Well, you know how when she won, she cried.
Yeah.
She went to the Razzies and she said she was so moved and honoured by this, which is great. That's such a great way to handle it. And also, Catwoman is hilariously bad. Although I don't think she's particularly bad in it. I think she did what she could with the material, to be honest. But
I'm just thinking about Francis and Ali. Every time with you, it's always about Hitler and erectile dysfunction.
It's my brand, mate.
Those are his 2 main enthusiasms, as you know. Let's move on. So we have a story now from the States. A 3'2" woman who is expecting her second child with her 5'9" non-binary spouse has opened up about the cruel comments received from online trolls mocking their relationship. This is Jade and her partner Todd from Ohio defended their marriage on a recent episode of Love, Don't Judge, saying critics have claimed it's inappropriate for a little person to be with someone who is of average height. Todd, who uses they, them pronouns, has also been targeted for being non-binary after appearing in Jade's TikTok videos and live streams. I mean, what has it got to do with anyone else? I absolutely don't understand why anyone is criticising them at all. What's it got to do with them? I honestly think it's baffling. Why has that happened?
Because there are horrible people out there. And
it's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's absolutely ridiculous. They're in love, they're happy, they're parents. What's the problem?
Well, there isn't a problem, clearly, and I don't. I mean, I think it just goes to show that the people I was talking about earlier, actually, so the abusive people online, the really vicious ones, they really go after people for anything they can find. Anything at all. And it's particularly prominent, I have to say, on the left. But anyway.
But should they have also probably not put their profile as public? Because
why not? Why can't they say
that? Well, so this is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you victim blaming now, though, Francis?
No, I'm just saying that there are people out there who are very nasty.
Yeah.
And if you are somebody who is going to be more likely to have the mickey taken out of you, shall I say?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you put things in place to stop you having the mickey taken out of you? Or am I being really right-wing now when I'm saying this?
You're free to be right.
Yeah.
Is that right-wing particularly? I don't know, but I mean...
But that just means, like, horrible, unfeeling, insensitive and nasty.
But you must have, because you're a public figure, you put yourself out there, and you must get some vicious abuse, because you're quite partisan, aren't you, in your...
Yeah, I've been given lots and lots of anti-Semitic abuse, because obviously the co-host of my show, Constantine, is Jewish.
Yes.
And they think I'm Jewish, so they were saying really nasty anti-Semitic things to Constantine, you know, saying things like, go back to Israel. He's never been to Israel, but they were still saying that to him. And they were saying, you know, Jewish Jew. They called me the fat Jew. I said, that's too much, mate. That's where we really crossed the line. That's where I really got offended. But I think part of the problem is the moment you put yourself out there, you're going to leave yourself open to this type of...
I suppose what you're saying is there isn't... Like, if you do put yourself out there, you have to accept that you are going to get... I mean, public figures always get abuse of some kind or another. But I kind of think we also have to be... We also should say that all abuse is wrong.
Yeah, of course.
You shouldn't be abusing people online, I would say. Well, do you get any hostile stuff online?
I get fat Jew. It might be the same person.
I think it's probably... Sorry, that's just a fan of mine. That's all that is. Anyway, look, we're going to take a break now. After the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be speaking to the man who helped a Finnish politician win her case after she was accused of hate speech for quoting the Bible. Don't go away.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So earlier this week, judges in Finland dismissed hate speech charges against a politician and a bishop. MP Päivi Räsänen and Bishop Johanna Paula were both put on trial for writing comments about Christianity. Räsänen also tweeted a picture of a Bible verse and had criticised the Lutheran Church for co-sponsoring the Helsinki Pride Parade. They were accused of having hateful beliefs, but after a 2-day trial, they walked free. Lorcan Price, who works for ADF International and was part of the legal team that defended Räsänen in Finland, and he joins me now. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew.
So, Lorcan, can you talk me through this? Because you were in part of the defence team here, and a lot of people won't have heard of this story. They won't know what happened. And I say someone was arrested for quoting the Bible, and they'll think I'm mad, but this did happen, didn't it?
Yes. In 2019 actually, Päivi quoted the Bible in part of a tweet she issued aimed at the leadership of her own church the Finnish Lutheran Church criticising their co-sponsorship of the Pride Parade, kind of asking, is this something that the church should be doing? For that, a criminal complaint was made. She was investigated by the police. She was subject to over 10 hours of interrogation under caution. The police initially decided not to go ahead with the charges, but then a new prosecutor general was appointed, and she decided to resurrect the charges, and they went forward to trial.
So is Pivy, I mean, she's coming from a Christian background. Presumably there were religious reasons,
yes,
religious objections.
Yes.
But was it abusive in nature, the tweet?
Well, this is where the key issue in the trial was, because Finnish law prohibits hate speech, and it's kind of under a strange terminology. They call it ethnic agitation. But the view that the prosecutor took was that because the Bible equates homosexual activity with sin and shame, that itself gave rise to hatred, and it incited hatred in the community and was harmful. And of course, what that meant was, in practice, and that the trial became about the question of whether or not these theological concepts could be considered to be essentially criminal because some people may be offended by them, and it may create, the claim of the prosecutor at least, a climate of intolerance.
I mean, does that mean, though, that if this trial would have gone the other way, that even selling a copy of the Bible or the Quran would suddenly become a hateful act?
Well, this is the very question that we were asking. Does it mean then that the police would be called to churches to monitor what pastors or priests are saying? Does it mean that Christians, if they shared a Bible with their colleagues or their friends or their neighbours, could find themselves facing criminal charges? And it's not simply that tweet, though. They went after her for a number of other things as well. She published a document in 2004 about the Christian understanding of marriage and sexuality, a very small document with a very limited publication run. And this was found by an activist who then made a criminal complaint on the basis of that, something written over 16 years ago. And the bishop who was in charge of the Luther Foundation that published it, only a few hundred copies were published, he was charged as well with incitement to hatred for having published it.
I mean, I find it astonishing that anyone would be surprised that Christians would have Christian beliefs.
Well, we were pretty surprised by that as well. The problem really becomes a question then, because we think of Finland as a liberal, democratic, tolerant country, how these hate speech laws are used to shut down the range of things that people can talk about. And then even when it comes to people with religious beliefs that some people may find upsetting or shocking, that they're allowed to freely share them in a democratic society.
Yes.
So this was a really important question for the Finnish judges to deal with.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me is, I've read Paul Coleman's book on hate speech, on censorship, and he reproduces in that book the various hate speech laws throughout Europe. One thing that's very clear is no one can agree what hate speech means. So legally, doesn't that create a problem?
You can say that again. It really, really does, yeah. The problem is we've seen these hate speech laws, and Paul documents this really well in his book Censored, spread across Europe. We now have the European Union potentially getting involved. People here, luckily, in the UK don't have to worry about that anymore, but it's planning to make it a so-called Eurocrime.
A Eurocrime?
A Eurocrime, up there with money laundering, people trafficking, terrorism, and things like that are already in one of the European Union treaties. So because there's no clear definition of hate speech, and even international bodies like the Council of Europe will concede that there is no agreed international law definition of this, it's applied in a very inconsistent way. And the problem with that is, when it comes to sharing your beliefs or saying something controversial, if you're concerned about the possibility of being put through a 2-day criminal trial, hours and hours of police investigation, you're going to probably hold your thoughts. You're going to hold your mouth. You're going to step back from saying something. And that's the chilling effect that you've spoken about before, and that we're increasingly aware of in society, where the public square is cleared of all possibly controversial views because people are afraid ultimately of being prosecuted.
So even the fact that you won this case, in a sense it doesn't matter, because we use the phrase the process is the punishment, but it also sends a signal. It sent a signal to people saying, look, you're going to go through this as well if you dare to express your views. It certainly has, whilst it's not outright censorship, because the verdict went the right way, it does create the conditions within which people will self-censor.
Yes, and that is the problem with hate speech laws. They have the effect, essentially, and this is desired by the people who put them into law, of closing down controversial views. And the European Union is quite clear that that's really what they're after as well in some of their proposals. What I think is important to note, you're quite right, this has been incredibly stressful and costly for Pivy and for Bishop Johanna. I would say watch this space in relation to what happens next, because the prosecutor has indicated that they may appeal the verdict. And remarkably, in Finland, the prosecution has the power to appeal a not guilty verdict. So there could be another round and maybe even more of court proceedings, and it could ultimately end up at the European Court of Human Rights, depending on how it goes.
I mean, I feel with this question of hate speech that it's gone to the point where people just accept the concept, but I don't accept the concept of hate speech. I think hate is a human emotion that shouldn't be audited by the state, and people should be free to say whatever they want without fear of prosecution. But that argument, it feels like people now talk about, well, free speech doesn't mean hate speech. It's just, it's a sort of mantra that's just sort of rattled off.
Yeah.
Has that argument been lost?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I would say no. The European Court of Human Rights, which I think a lot of people may be surprised the UK is still a member of that court, notwithstanding Brexit, because they're separate organisations. But the European Court of Human Rights takes the view that hate speech isn't even entitled to the protection of freedom of expression. But then, on the other hand, as we discussed a moment ago, nobody's quite sure what hate speech is.
Right, so they want to carve out exceptions for hate speech, but they don't know what hate speech is.
Precisely.
Right.
And I would say in the last number of years, things have gotten decisively worse at the court, the European Court, in terms of these cases. They've sided more and more with censorship and closing down of free discussion in the name of hate speech.
And is the problem because people have bought into this idea that if people say mean things, it has a knock-on effect and it ruins society and it leads ultimately to violence? Something which has been disproven again and again.
Exactly. Well, that's the claim that's made. I mean, traditionally in the law, and for a long time, it was an offence to incite violence or to encourage violence. But there's a clear distinction between that and something, as you say, which is an emotion, which is hatred.
Yes.
And somebody may say something that I find disagreeable, but there's no guarantee that I will hate somebody as a result of that. And then even I have to take an additional step then with my hatred into a criminal act before I think the law should become involved. But to censor yourself because of your concern that you may end up being prosecuted means that we're all looking over our shoulders every time we say something possibly controversial. And it really harms the free exchange of ideas in a democracy. And you talk about other cases. I mean, on our website as well, we go into this in some detail, the implications of Pivey's case. And we explain really what's at stake here isn't just relevant for Christians, and of course it is, but more broadly for everyone, irrespective of what view they hold.
But we can look at this and say, well, that's going on in Finland. It isn't possible that someone in the UK could be arrested for quoting the Bible. But there have been preachers who have faced criminalisation for things they've said.
That's correct, yes. Some of those cases are taken under the Public Order Acts, but this government has a number of proposals to close down the right of protest. There's also an online harms bill that they're proposing at the moment as well.
Which they've changed to the online safety bill.
That's correct, sorry, yes. Yeah. So overall, there are a number of provisions in the law in the UK that can act to close down discussion where there's a possibility. And there are racial and religious elements as well too in the criminal law which prohibit what they call stirring up hatred.
Yes, but I mean, that's something that the SNP have introduced in their last hate speech bill, stirring up hatred. But I don't know what they mean by that. It strikes me as a very nebulous idea. And I do know that the Malicious Communications Act, the Electronic Communications Act, it talks about the criteria is that if you say something online that is grossly offensive as opposed to merely offensive. But how can that be anything other than hopelessly subjective? And if it is hopelessly subjective, what's it doing on the statute books?
But that's the problem with these laws, Andrew, and not just in the United Kingdom, in my own country, in the Republic of Ireland, they're planning more hate speech laws. Across Western Europe, Europe more generally, these laws are coming in. And because we don't know exactly what hate speech is, and we don't know where the line between offensive and grossly offensive, and there is case law around this, which we can talk about again, but ultimately, it does really create a lot of uncertainty in the law, and it leads to a situation, as I say, where people are concerned. If I express a view that's controversial on marriage, if I express a view that's controversial on immigration, will I find the police knocking on my door? And that is harmful, as I say, more generally to society.
But is it the case that the reason why we don't see politicians standing up in the Houses of Parliament saying we need to abolish our current existing hate speech laws is because when they do that, there is a fear that people will accuse them of siding with very reactionary people. In other words, we defend everyone's speech, even if we hate the speech that they are saying. But that nuance is not often appreciated.
No, it's not, and that's the problem. If you take a position on this, yes, you're very often accused of being on the right or the far right, and politicians will run from that allegation. And unfortunately, as I say, we can't rely on the courts here either. The problem ultimately is at the highest level in Europe. They have not really been willing to defend freedom of expression. So we're left with, I think, the need for something in this country certainly would be a Freedom of Speech Act, which says, irrespective of all the other areas that speech may be possibly criminalised in the law, that there be strong defences placed in. And I know the government is proposing to reform the Human Rights Act at the moment, and this would be a golden opportunity to strengthen freedom of expression.
So, final question then, are you ultimately optimistic? Because as you say, we're not in the EU, so we don't have those shackles to prevent this from happening. But then I look at our Tory government, and while they say they want to enshrine free speech and have that sort of just as a given, they're also introducing, as you say, the online safety bill, the policing and protesting bill. It looks like they're sort of doing two different things at the same time.
Well, I think hopefully the government here will ultimately see that they're, I think in the DNA, let's say, certainly of their party, but Boris Johnson has written and spoken about this before, that freedom of expression is a cornerstone right. And it's been something that traditionally, British common law has protected in a major way. And if they are reforming the Human Rights Act, or if they want to introduce something entirely new, freedom of speech legislation, I don't think ultimately that they will lose any public support over it. I think increasingly people will expect that they should not be censored and possibly face criminal prosecution for speaking their mind.
Well, that's a very optimistic note to end on. Lorcan Price, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. After the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be asking my panel to help solve some of your unfiltered dilemmas. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
On Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is the legendary psychotherapist and author who helped Ronnie O'Sullivan, Bradley Wiggins and Sir Chris Hoy to achieve sporting greatness. Professor Steve Peters, the author of the international bestseller The Chimp Paradox, is live at 10. In the big question, is Britain broke? Plus my all-star panel, and in my big opinion, eco-zealots are not campaigners, they're terrorists. See you at 9.
Welcome back. This week, the monument to famous abolitionist David Livingstone was the latest to be identified as a target for potential removal. due to an alleged connection to the slave trade. The statue in Glasgow was highlighted due to Livingstone's defence of cotton masters, having worked in a cotton mill from the age of 10, which had likely used West Indian cotton. So to discuss this, I'm joined by GB News presenter Inaya Folarin Iman. Inaya, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I think more and more people are getting quite confused about what's going on here, because we understand when activists target statues of slave traders, even if we might not approve. But this is a statue of an abolitionist. Can you explain to me what you think the thought process behind this is?
Yeah, it really is remarkable. And I think that there's so many things wrong with it. It's quite difficult to know where to start. I mean, I think firstly with what you just said, I think is a very pertinent point. I think it really confirms the slippery slope argument that some critics have been putting forward. It was originally, for example, people like Edward Colston, which was claimed by a lot of people that advocated for the toppling of his statue, that he was kind of unambiguously someone that did not represent the values that we have today, and everybody should agree this is someone that should be removed. But David Livingstone is actually somebody that is quite different. He is someone that condemned slavery and even described it as the greatest meanness ever perpetrated. But similarly, like many figures of that time, he was complex, just as, for example, the David Hume Tower in Edinburgh. Whilst he was someone that championed many of the Enlightenment values, he also had some odious views on race. But with David Livingstone, he actually argued against slavery, but he also regarded, for example, cotton masters as benevolent and paternalistic. So this is just the reality of what people in that time thought. They had complex ideas. Some people supported it in some instances, but thought other things in others. And that is just the reality of the human story. And I think that this is very black and white when it comes to censorship. This isn't providing new information, telling us anything new. I mean, I think it is quite shocking, this report that's come out, to tell us that, you know, they describe slavery as being through all of the tentacles of Glasgow. I mean, there's nothing new about the fact that, you know, slavery was around during that time. It funded many cities and individuals. This is not new information. And it just seems to be a completely pointless and expensive exercise.
It does strike me that a lot of the activists who are calling for these kind of developments are struggling with this idea that ethical ideas change over time. And the idea that to be a person of this kind, a prominent person, a wealthy person living at this time, and to be anti-slavery is an incredible leap of critical thinking. It's someone. This is a free thinker. This is someone who is thinking outside of the box. This is a progressive. And the idea that he wouldn't have some views that we would hold problematic today, I mean, it just seems, it strikes me as historically illiterate.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there are so many different ways of interpreting it. Rather than seeing, you know, a statue as solely a kind of reminder of the horrors of slavery, you could also interpret it as, you know, a reminder of how we triumph over the ideas that birthed individuals that supported slavery. And I think that there is this one view that we are told that we all have to think about it and interpret it. And oftentimes it's actually one of the most patronizing and ironically paternalistic views towards ethnic minorities, that, you know, we cannot engage with the complexities of the past, that, you know, just seeing a statue is one that frightens us and prevents us from being able to engage in our everyday life. I think it's incredibly condescending. And I mean, it's ironic, you know, Scotland, a society whose black population is 0.8%, you know, much, much lower than Britain as a whole. You know, Glasgow, it's about 2%. And it doesn't strike me as something that was largely advocated by ethnic minority people. I mean, this report that actually led to this argument that it should be toppled was commissioned in 2019. So actually before the Black Lives Matter protests, which garnered a lot of these conversations around reconciling with the past and so on. So often it does seem like this is being advocated for by individuals who are not really acting for the benefit of ethnic minority people. But it seems to be a kind of cultural problem of self-loathing and self-flagellation rather than actually materially benefiting individuals in the present day. Another ironic thing is that Glasgow, you know, a city that has one of the worst drug problems in the country, addiction is a huge problem. To think that they could actually invest money in improving people's material lives in the present day, they choose to kind of focus on looking at the past, reinterpreting it, editing it along contemporary moral lines. And I just don't think it helps anybody.
I mean, that's a very good point, that, you know, this is a very easy thing that they can do and show how virtuous they are. But there are serious problems that are not being addressed again and again. And it does seem to me, when you hear about these things, often there are these minor consultations with local people. And it would seem in virtually all cases, local people don't want the street names changed. They don't want the statues taken down. But then ultimately what happens is the figures in authority go ahead and do it anyway. I mean, does it feel to you that this is very much a top-down thing?
Oh, 100%. And I think, there's nothing, I mean, the Edward Colston example is a very clear one in terms of, it was done by a mob. But I think that oftentimes the public aren't engaged with, and even when they are, there's a climate of fear around the conversation. So oftentimes people don't really feel like they can put forward their true and honest perspective, and it's not done in an open way. And if you disagree with this, because you, for example, want to allow more statues, not necessarily less, to be created and so on, then you're often regarded as racist. But in Scotland in particular, there is a wider problem right now of a kind of campaign of moral engineering on the part of institutions and government. We see it with the Scottish hate crime bill. Recently they've banned smacking. They reversed a previous law which would actually give every child a state-sponsored kind of individual that would look after them. And there's so many things that are going on in Scotland right now, which seems to me to be institutionalising a very narrow form of social justice ideology as a way of differentiating themselves from England. And I do think that, to me, this seems like a broader, excuse the pun, but whitewash of history by many figures within Scotland who try and suggest that they were not part of colonialism, they were not part of slavery, it was all kind of England and so on. And actually, part of reconciling with the past, engaging with it, is saying a true story of who was involved and not trying to, remove figures that don't conform to things that are inconvenient for us today.
But I've spoken to a number of activists about this issue, and I hear the same argument again and again, which is that the reason we are talking about Edward Colston is because a mob took the statue down, took matters into their own hands. We are having conversations about the reality of Britain's complicity in the slave trade, which perhaps we weren't having, and perhaps we ought to have been having. And their argument is that surely we need more education about this and not less.
Yeah, I mean, this is an argument put forward, and I very much disagree with it. Firstly, the idea that before 2020 that nobody had, known that slavery and colonialism happened in Britain is frankly for the birds. I mean, anti-racist struggles throughout the 20th century were very popular, supported by particularly working class people in Britain who are now being recast as racist by often, managerial middle class individuals who have barely engaged with ethnic minority people their whole life. But actually, one of the problems that you have with a lot of the contemporary discourse on so-called re-examining history is it often exaggerates the role that certain individuals play in the past in order to paint a very narrow picture. So, for example, even this particular individual, David Livingstone, many people hadn't even heard of him. And there is this kind of exaggeration, almost this kind of boogeyman type elevation of figures as these kind of evil people that, are just enslaving and doing horrible things, when actually it's a much more complex. There are lots of different discussions and debates and conflicts going on at that time, even amongst different countries that were subject to colonialism and so on. And we do see this with this discussion about the role that Black people played within history, such as the Black Tudors. Whilst it's very interesting to find out, Black or ethnic minority figures, the role they played in Britain, there is this kind of almost suggestion that they were huge transformers a lot of the time, and they actually played very minor roles. So I think there is a danger in this narrative about decolonising curriculum and removing statues, which exaggerates how big a role certain individuals play. Because the reason we don't remember lots of their names is because they weren't actually that relevant or that impactful even at that time.
But Anaya, what would you make of the argument? I mean, for instance, let's take the Rhodes Must Fall campaign in Oxford, and the chief organiser of the student activists who wanted that statue removed said that every time he walked past the statue, it was like the equivalent of a physical punch in the face, that it was a form of a physical assault. Do you take on board the view that for some people, for whatever reason, seeing statues of slavers is traumatic, is offensive, and that maybe we do need to take their views on board?
So So I do acknowledge that some people might be hurt by that, but I really don't think that that's, a framework for us to govern an entire society by, which is the hurt feelings of a minority. I mean, there's so many things that could offend individuals for whatever reason. And if we effectively governed our society based on that logic, that inanimate objects could cause trauma or make people feel that they're punched in the face, then I think that we would be living in a very sanitized, uncreative society, which was just had marshmallows and, bouncy castles every single place. So I think that, whilst I acknowledge that, I would say to that individual, well, there's ways in which we can do that. So with the ways in which we can deal with that, let's have conversations, platforms in universities, in museums and galleries. But ironically, those are being shut down by the same individuals when people try and debate these things in a way that isn't just simply good versus evil, white oppressor, ethnic minorities, virtuous and oppress. And so I'd say that we can't govern society by that way, but actually the way we can do that is have more conversations, more debates and more discussions, which are often, unfortunately, shut down right now.
And I have no doubt, going to go on and on because this story is not going away. Thanks so much for joining me today. Now, every week we dedicate this part of the show to the turbid waters of social media. First up, this is a video that was tweeted by Northamptonshire Police, and it's fair to say it provoked plenty of debate on Twitter. Paul Miley pleaded guilty to careless driving after a cyclist fell off her bike. Just take a look at this. OK, that happened very quickly. Let's take another look, but this time with the footage slowed down. Now, as you can see, the driver's car didn't actually hit the cyclist at all. But Northamptonshire Police have pointed out that it doesn't matter when it comes to careless driving. Right, do you think they've got a point there, Josh? I mean, he didn't actually hit her.
He's driving as far, really, as he can on the left, and then he's putting back in. But the reason why she's fallen over is because the person in front stopped. And it's one of those bicycles where you've got your feet trapped in the steering, the pedals. So that person couldn't get their feet out in time to then lean on. That's why she fell over it.
But he was very close. I mean,
he was close. He should have slowed down.
Yes,
I agree with that. And people need to be careful when there are cyclists. At the same time, he didn't hit them, and it's a sort of misleading footage to sort of pretend that that's why she fell. No, she fell off because you can see there the person in front stops.
Yeah.
She then doesn't know how to ride a bicycle or doesn't know how to stop on a bicycle, and then fell into a ditch, which is very funny.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one was hurt. We can have a laugh about it, but there's part of me that just sort of thinks, get off the road. Cyclists really annoy me.
Was that you in the big Jeep?
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me. What do you think, Francis?
He was going too quick, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Of course he was. Yeah, he was. But it's a country road. People are maniacs on country roads.
Yeah, but that's something that shouldn't be celebrated.
No, I'm not celebrating it, but...
You're going to go, yeah, it's fine. Just have a couple of drinks and drive home,
No, but saying that, I mean, I was in Naples relatively recently, and the way they drive in Naples is insane. Like, they think it's like a game. It's like Grand Theft Auto or something. Everyone's... Anyway, look, that sounds kind of xenophobic, so I'll move on. Next up, this is a bizarre image of a naked man shopping in Screwfix. I don't know what Screwfix is. Is there a shop called Screwfix?
That is actually me.
That's you. That's you. Looking great, Josh.
Thank you very much. Shaved buttocks and... Yes.
I thought it was waxed, to be honest. That's what I thought.
Well, thank you so much. No, I'll go for the shave. So he went in to buy some... what I want to know is...
buying light bulbs.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I just want to know how he paid, because that is a real touch and go or whatever it is. I don't want to see...
I feel sorry for the person who was behind the counter, because apparently this was their first ever shift. And I think that she probably started thinking, well, this is just what happens here. Like, this is the naked hardware store. People just come in and they buy things naked. This is the convention.
Yeah.
And maybe if you accept that convention, it's OK. I would say it's a bit socially gauche.
Do you think?
I do. I do.
I tell you what, I don't think that he was probably the worst customer they had in Screwfix that day.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
I don't think they would.
OK, fair enough. But I don't know what more to say about that other than don't go shopping naked, because that's not allowed, is it? There we go. Public information. That's what I'm here for. Anyway, so let's move on to another one of this. A woman has been banned for life by the airline Jet2 after she was thrown off a flight for screaming at cabin crew. And it's also alleged Catherine Bush from Cleckheaton in West Yorkshire slapped passengers, proper Will Smith style. Bush, who was fined £5,000 by Jet2, has now written a letter of apology for her behaviour on a flight from Manchester to Antalya in Turkey. The plane was forced to land in Vienna. So here's what happened.
What have I done? What have I done wrong on this flight? What have I done wrong on this flight? What have I done wrong on this flight? I'm out of your face. What have I done wrong on this flight? What have I done wrong on this flight? You haven't got an answer. You're absolute muppet. I told you. What? You're not listening. What? Tell it again. Tell it again. I'm squaring up to crew. I'm not squaring up to nobody. I'm not squaring up to nobody. I'm asking you, what have I done? Well, what have I done? Well, tell me. No, don't touch me.
Well, I'm on her side. You know, she was charming, she was polite, she was articulate. Well, for her part of the world.
I'll tell you what, having watched that, I now understand why that bloke walked out of that Shakespeare play.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good callback. Yeah. That's
Thank you.
No, but I watched that and I feel sorry for the people on the flight. Yeah. Because I remember getting a flight to America and the guy next to me who was what are they called, waiters or stewards, he was saying to me, he was saying basically if it kicks off, I know what to do. He was telling me that they all have training about how to deal with people who are drunk on the flights. And he was boasting to me about how he could break my arm if he wanted to.
Maybe he was chatting you up or something.
It felt a little flirtatious.
I mean, she's asking, like, what have I done? Tell me what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
You're wearing a crop top. Yeah. And you need to lose weight. Just got my own show on GBNews. There you go.
Howie. That was absolutely outrageous, but kind of true. Anyway, so let's move on. We've got another video now. This is from earlier today on LBC Radio. An activist glued himself to a microphone and refused to... They like gluing themselves to things, don't they, these activists? Let's have a look at this now.
And you are happy to watch them sit in misinformation. You are happy.
What's the misinformation that's been given out, that you've given out this morning?
You have a massive platform. You have a massive platform, right?
Oh, here we go.
You have a massive platform, a microphone that you can use to tell people about the situation we're in, and you are not using it, right?
So for those of you listening,
not using it.
For those of you listening on the radio,
someone like me, an ordinary person who is fighting for their future, is having to take the microphone in a situation like this and having to tell your viewers the situation we are in, because people like you do not.
So for those...
So that was a live radio interview between presenter Tom Swarbrick and Just Stop Oil spokesperson Nathan McGovern. The eco-protester claimed LBC was not using a massive platform to share the dangers of the climate crisis, and there you have the glue. Grabs the microphone. Ever done anything like that?
Well, I got worried there because when someone gets out lube in the middle of an interview, I'm like, which way is this protest going to go?
Yeah, it wasn't. Would you?
I'll tell you what. When I was watching that, my first thought was, flipping hell, Simon Amstell's gone off the rails, hasn't it?
He does look a bit like Simon Amstel.
Yeah.
It was, but he's obviously very passionate about it. I mean, do you want to... Because it's not easy to get off that stuff, you know?
Number one, it's not easy to get off. Number two, his argument was that they weren't essentially telling people the truth, as he saw it, about the climate crisis. But they brought him on to talk about the climate crisis.
Right, exactly, yes.
So it doesn't make any sense. And then he refused to speak about the climate crisis and then just glued himself to the microphone, rendering the microphone inoperable so he couldn't talk about the climate crisis.
I suppose his point is that, you know, yes, you've invited me on, you've given me a platform to talk about what I want to talk about, but I should be here all the time.
Yes.
Like, I should be here 24 hours, we should only talk about this, this is the only thing that matters. But that's what they do think, because they do. The eco-warriors do genuinely think that, and, you know, I think it's a sincere belief. They think the world is burning. This is the only priority there should be.
Yeah. I just thought also that choosing glue is maybe not... He should have, like, had, like, handcuffs or something, because it takes about 30 seconds to set. So really, you're going to go, I'm gluing myself to here, and then a bouncer would sort of come in and pull the... But no, just give me 30 seconds. It's going to set. Give me just 20 seconds more. I'll be stuck here.
That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
I would have used Pritt stick or something, so it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, exactly. Better for your skin.
It's much better, much easier to wash off. Now, look, we're at that part of the show. We're near to the end of the show now, so we're going to talk through some of your unfiltered dilemmas. And I'm always very grateful every week when you send in your problems, however twisted they might be. And I would like to hear every now and then when we've actually helped someone, because I've never had that follow up. I've just had the problems and our responses. So here we go. This is a dilemma from James in Essex. James says, after a night out, I was feeling a little peckish. There wasn't much in the fridge when I got home, apart from a plate of ropey-looking chicken, which I devoured rather quickly. Turns out the wife was saving it for the dog. I lied to her and blamed the kids. Should I come clean? James, this is a dysfunctional relationship that you're in. There's all sorts of lies going on. There are trust issues. There's probably some kind of psychosexual problem there as well that I wouldn't like to dwell on. What do you think, Josh?
I think he should leave his wife.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's over. Move on. Yeah. What do you think?
You're welcome.
I think the most important thing is who's going to keep the dog.
Yeah, it is an important thing. Look, let's move on to another one. I don't think we've helped you at all there, James. This is a dilemma from Daisy. Daisy says, I go out with a guy called Richard and he is addicted to Lego. He even has the VIP card for the shops. Do I tell him it's the Lego or me? Francis.
Date adults.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What kind of adult man is just into... you're going to tell me you're into Lego now, aren't you?
Beige flag.
Because I know you're into board games.
I'm into my board games. I've got my Lego Darth Vader head.
Yeah, have you?
I've got 5 kids, mate. Of course I do. I've got to spend time with them somehow.
Yeah.
Board games and Lego, that's the only way I can communicate.
I think I would say if you don't like the Lego, you have to tell him. You have to say that's the red line. Yeah. Let's do one quick more dilemma, but you've just got time. Third dilemma is from Ed. Ed in Sutton says, I went vegetarian in January, but got home on Friday after a few beers and ploughed into a plate of pre-cooked pigs in blankets. Told my partner I'd thrown them out in disgust rather than own up to my own failings. Will you forgive me? Will I forgive you? Yeah. I don't forgive you because I'm a vegetarian and I'm quite militant about that. Yeah. So I think that's absolutely outrageous.
What's this theme going on? Who are the people who are watching this show? Well, just scoffing food in the middle of the night and lying to their partners about it.
I think this gives you a very good insight into the kind of audience that I attract. Okay. Anyway, thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when the good guys sent more death threats to J.K. Rowling. Keep it up, guys. You're doing well. Wordle had a woke makeover and everybody was talking about a certain slap at the Oscars. Thank you to my panel, Francis Foster and Josh Howie, and to my guests, Caroline Fisk, Lorcon Price and Enaya Falarin Iman. And if you want to hear more from Jaspreet Kaur, who is the author of Brown Girl Like Me, that's a new book, then you can listen to our whole conversation on my new podcast, Free Speech Nation, the podcast. The full interview is live now. You can access that wherever you usually download your podcasts, or you can watch it in full on YouTube, so do check that out. And if you want to join us live in the studio, be part of our wonderful audience, you can do that. Please go to www.sroaudiences.com and you can apply there and come and join us. So stay tuned now for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's next. And do not forget that Headliners is on every night at 11, the late night paper preview show with comedians. Thank you very much for watching Free Speech Nation. I'll see you next week.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for most, but rain edging in from the northwest. Let's take a look at those details. The southwest will end the day mostly dry with plenty of sunny spells on offer. The odd isolated light shower is possible, but it will be a fine evening for most. It will also be a fine and dry Sunday evening for the southeast. There'll be some fair weather cloud and plenty of sunny spells. Sunny spells will be plentiful across South Wales this evening too. Winds will be mainly light and there'll be a little fair weather cloud. There'll also be a little more cloud across the Midlands, but there'll also be some bright or sunny spells. An isolated light shower is possible, but for most it will remain dry. It's a different story across north-east England, where cloud will be increasing as rain gradually edges in from the north. The winds will also start to increase here through the evening. The wet weather will already be in place across southern Scotland this evening. The rain will be patchy in nature and turn heavy at times, with strong gusty winds too. Northern Ireland will also be cloudy, with patchy outbreaks of rain edging southeastwards through the evening. The winds will also be strengthening here, especially around coastal areas where gales are possible. The cloud, rain and strengthening winds will continue to edge steadily southeast overnight, reaching all areas by the morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight and into tomorrow morning.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.